The Kuala Lumpur is irrelevant whether they love me, everybody can't love me. You love me, and that's important. When they visited Dato' Tan in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and they visited his factories and his facilities, Madam Speaker, he's not no fly-by-night. He is not no fly-by-night investor. He's not no fly-by, because he was sued by you. They were very impressed with his substantial business interests. Not just in Malaysia. He has an agency for Mercedes-Benz, BMW in the UK, also for Diners Club Charge. He has businesses and factories in Singapore, in Brunei, in Hong Kong, in New Zealand. He was featured extensively on the front cover of Malaysia Business Week. He's no fly-by-night investor. He was prepared to put his money and to raise the necessary financing, which he had financiers. Madam Speaker, we knew him to be a serious businessman. And we think, and still we thought, and still think, that there was no real reason for Dato' Tan to travel halfway around the world and to come here on a land grab, to grab the lands of the people of Antigua and Barbuda. Well, he did that. He did that because you sued him. You caused him to hold on to that land. You caused him to be in breach of the agreement. He was in breach of the agreement. We sought also to take back the lands. We put him on notice. And we did. But I want to give the history and the true story. Because it must be told. It must not be said, and you must not get away with it, that Lester Bird give away all Antigua people lands. 1,500 acres for peppercorn rent. I have to defend him. He's the former Prime Minister and my political leader. Madam Speaker, at the pain of sounding repetitious, this government, Madam Speaker, who was then opposition, was trigger happy, and they're still trigger happy today. When they sued the Attorney General then, the Honorable Lester Bird then, and Dato' Tan Kehak. And, Madam Speaker, the agreement that was signed in 1997, the Court of Appeal held that the declarations that the Honorable Baldwin Spencer sought then were not justified. He held that the case that was brought against the Attorney General and Dato' Tan was unconstitutional, illegal, and null and void. And that the Bill Asian Village Antigua Development Act 1997 was ultra vires the powers of the legislation. It was not ultra vires. They were arguing that it was. The then opposition lost both cases. Madam Speaker, the Asian Village project was doomed from the beginning. It was doomed because the UPP opposition at that time caused far-reaching negative publicity from Los Angeles to the Middle East, to South America, to North America, and sending a message that Antigua does not welcome foreign investment. We are not doing that. We are always pro-investor and investor-friendly. Madam President, Madam Speaker, any action to repeal the laws will further aggravate the government of Antigua and Barbuda's position. It will not demonstrate good faith on the part of the government. It will not benefit the government. I am saying there's another way to do it, man. Alan Stanford sat down with Dato' Tan Kehak and they signed a deed of settlement and they came to a private treaty agreeing to pay a certain amount of money, $22 million for the land. I am not saying that I want to see Dato' Tan Kehak get $22 million US for the land, but I'm saying if that is the quickest, if that is the best, if that is the position that we can, that is reasonable, that can be done, so that the people can start getting investment into the country. $500 million US? You going to turn a blind eye to $500 million US in investment? Alan Stanford committed to pay $1 million US, $2.7 million a month, flat fee in taxes per month to the consolidated fund. That's nearly 12 million US a year, 30 million EC a year in taxes. How can you forego that? How can you forego that because, yes, you don't want Dato Tan to get $22 million? In my humble view, whether he paid $6 million or $2 million for the land and he get a windfall of 18 million or 20 is irrelevant when I have to think that $500 million US would be invested and injected into this economy right now. We don't need that money now. We don't need those jobs for your constituents and for the people of this country. Why tie up the whole process? Dato Tan is going to sue. We may ultimately win. I'm not a lawyer. You go to the High Court, then you go to the Appeal Court, then you go to Privy Council. It may be a drawn-out exercise for 5 years or longer. What's going to happen? By that time, we win the election again. But you need to give the project a chance. If Alan Stanford is saying, I am ready to invest, I am ready to implement this project, but aren't you going to give it to Alan Stanford? Haven't you already cut a deal with Alan Stanford that you're going to give it to him? Well, you must give it to him. I am for this project. Whether it's Alan Stanford or it's Dato Tan Keok, I am for jobs, I am for creation of wealth and employment in this country. And I can't turn a blind eye. The only thing he said that I was a tough negotiator. Tough negotiator, hard-nosed negotiator. That's the only thing he would say, that I said that he must pay 100,000 US an acre for the lands of the airport. Madam Speaker, the government's claim to forfeit this land and the concessions under the Asian Village Incentive Act is not going to help the government. It's going to be a lengthy process. It's going to be controversial. There are certain differences arising out of the agreement. Dato Tan is going to come back and say, well, we did not perform all our obligations. We will say, well, you were in breach. It's going to be a drawn-out exercise, Madam Speaker. And we are forgetting here that any differences arising out of the agreement must be settled by arbitration. And arbitration where, Madam Speaker? Not here in Antigua and Barbuda, but in London. And arbitration proceedings are very expensive. The Honourable Attorney General will tell you so. Why should we expose taxpayers' money to go to London and tie ourselves up in arbitration when we have an investor on our doorstep willing, ready and able to invest $1.3 billion Eastern Caribbean dollars into this country and get on with the project? So let us cut our losses. Let us take our losses now. Let us proceed with the project. You don't want to send a message out there to future foreign investors that Antigua is an unfriendly investor climate country for new prospective investors coming into your country. You want to send a positive message. And Madam Speaker, most importantly, the consolidated fund can't afford any more drain on it by high legal fees. And the Antigua government will have to retain counsel in London and eminent QC and arbitrators. And the government is fully aware of this provision. And the Attorney General is fully aware of this provision in the agreement. Who is going to suffer the losses? It is the ordinary poor people of this country that will have to pay for those lengthy and costly proceedings. And I'm saying, Madam Speaker, that we have another option. We have an option to go with Alan Stanford, allow him to proceed with the agreement that he signed with Dato Tan. It may hurt us that Dato Tan is getting so much money. We may feel that he made a windfall, he profited on our land. That may be so. But look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture. Honourable Member for Central, I learned very well at his feet. And I'm proud to say so. But Madam Speaker, we ought to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture here today is not about taking away the lands. And by the way, you have to pay the fullers, And if you go with Alan Stanford's proposal, you'll have $30 million. The Minister of Finance, my learned friend, will have $30 million EC dollars in the consolidated fund. every year committed from Allen